Territory of the Sechelt people. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Andy Johnson of the Sechelt Indian Band, who will offer a traditional song.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, the organizers, for inviting me here on behalf of the Sechelt Nation, welcoming you to the Sechelt Nation territory.
Thank you for inviting me here tonight to conduct the swearing-in ceremony. Congratulations, Mayor-elect Milne and the elected councillors. I would also like to extend my thanks for those candidates who were unsuccessful. Their participation in the election strengthens the democratic process. As councillors, you are given the ability to make and administer laws. You have been afforded this right by the people to whom you owe a legal duty, which you are about to acknowledge by your oath to them. You will be operating in a system of government that has three branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. It is an honor and a privilege for me, representing one branch of government, to take from you, representing another branch of government, your oath or affirmation. For all those who have served municipal government in the past, and for all of those of you here tonight who will start or continue to serve, the community owes you a wonderful debt of gratitude. You give your time away from family. You deal with difficult community problems. You prepare for meetings by reading volumes of materials. And you may at times have to look into the eyes of your neighbors when you make difficult decisions. That's not an easy task. The making of tough decisions is something that representatives, elected or appointed, of all branches of government have in common. As you make those decisions, I urge you to remember that our society and your community functions because of the responsibility you have undertaken and to your commitment in maintaining a lawful, just, and peace society. That is the true meaning of your oath. I'd now like to call upon Mayor-elect Milne to take his affirmation. So we're going to do the council first. I don't know, nobody's ever refused to come up before.
Call upon Lynn Forrest, Chair of the Sechelt Community Association Forum, to represent the community in the presentation of the chain of office to Mayor Milton.
Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, members of our community, neighbors, and my new colleagues on council. Let me begin tonight by acknowledging that we are, as mentioned earlier, on the traditional territory of the Sechelt Nation, and especially honored this evening with the presence of Chief Calvin Cragen and members of the Sechelt Nation Council. And thank you for the drumming. Other guests I would like to acknowledge this evening are Member of Legislative Assembly, Nicholas Simons, Mayor Wayne Rowe, visiting from the town of Gibsons, Gibsons Councillors Silas White and Stafford Lumley, who were just through this oath of office last night, and brand new councillors both. Thank you for being here. I'd also like to acknowledge Mayor Cameron Reid, Sechelt Mayor from 2002 to 2008, former councillors Gary Poole, Ann Kershaw, Ed Steeves, and Arthur Whistler, Mayor Darren Inkster, who joins us on council and was mayor from 2008 to 2011. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge a guest from Victoria, my mother Emily. Thank you for coming out. Mothers never seem to get tired even as sons get older and come to see the few accomplishments that we have. I am pleased to see so many elected officials from neighboring jurisdictions and former council members from Sechelt. Tonight is a night where we recognize the continuing role of government in our lives and the orderly transition between governments that we enjoy in Canada. We must keep in mind just how precious a democratic election really is. We had, here in Sechelt, a minor revolution, a community uprising in a sense, without a gunshot, without a single act of violence, without even protests in the street. When the most threatening political act that a candidate fears is a letter to the editor or an avalanche of bumper stickers rather than an avalanche of bullets, we can count our blessings for the peace, order, and good government that is our heritage in Canada. Tonight is also a night to thank those who have served on council over the past term, and especially to recognize the time served by Mayor John Henderson and councillors Doug Hockley, Tom Lamb, and Chris Moore. I want to personally acknowledge and recognize that all members of council offered their best efforts to the task of governing our community, and they deserve our thanks for doing so. I want to say three things this evening, a few more comments on being here on Sechelt's traditional territory and the need for reconciliation with Sechelt. Those comments will lead to a few words on reconciliation within our own community of Sechelt. Third, I will ask you to consider the importance of compassion and care in building our future. To acknowledge we are on the traditional territory of Sechelt Nation may seem like a simple statement, like a greeting, hello, or a comment on the weather. It is not so simple. When understood within the context of our shared history, it is a statement that acknowledges the unceded Aboriginal title to this territory and the full range of rights associated with Sechelt's use of their traditional lands. The acknowledgement of traditional territory also leads us to acknowledge Sechelt's culture and laws or protocols on how land is used and who uses the territory. In October, the District of Sechelt Council passed by resolution an act of recognition that formally acknowledges what I have just said and committed the district to working to reconcile the interests of all. In my view, that act of recognition should have been a larger, more significant event in our community. It was lost somewhat in the flurry of election activity, unnoticed by some, relegated to a photo op by others, reported in the back pages of the paper. It should have been a community-wide event, if not a celebration, at least an evening of speeches and gifts and formal ceremonies. This recognition, long overdue, is important for one simple reason. Sechelt's traditional territory and the Aboriginal title embedded in that territory is the foundation on which our community is built. It is the foundation on which everything else rests. Crown title, fee simple ownership, our economy, everything. If we do not recognize the foundation of Aboriginal title and then reconcile what we have with that foundation, what we have built on that foundation is completely at risk. If the foundation shifts, everything built on that foundation may fall. Within Coast Salish culture, the songs and ceremonies that are used to mark events are owned by particular individuals, by families, and by nations. The Sechelt Nation has a welcome song, and we were fortunate to hear it earlier this evening. We were fortunate to hear the welcome song because it is Sechelt's right to welcome us, not our right to be welcomed. They can withhold the welcome song. They can choose when to sing. We are fortunate that we have been welcomed since first contact, since first settlement of our people in their traditional territory. We have not always honored that tradition and that welcome. Imagine if you welcomed somebody into your home and they acted the way our community has acted towards Sechelt. I will not go into the details of the reserve system or residential schools or any number of small day-to-day hurts and acts of shame. Suffice to say, we should have done better. Still, Sechelt has welcomed us, has asked us to act with honor, asked us simply to recognize them, to know them for who they are. Once we recognize Sechelt as Sechelt, we must take the next step and find a genuine reconciliation of who they are and who we are. That is our future. The future of Sechelt depends upon the past, the present, and the future of the Sechelt Nation. Our future depends on them. It is not the other way around. A few decades ago, even a few years ago, I would not have said that. For many years, the lives of Indigenous people in this land were made dependent on colonialism. As we recognize Sechelt and other Aboriginal peoples in Canada for who they are, for who they have always been, it becomes absolutely clear that our future depends on their foundation. That is why reconciliation is so important to us all. If there is reconciliation needed with our closest neighbors on whose land we live, we have also learned, as the election campaign finally ended, that there is a need for a different kind of reconciliation within our own community. Sechelt needs to learn how to disagree, how to manage differences without anger, intimidation, or dismissal. We need to learn to embrace difference and diversity as a strength and not view difference as something to eliminate. Our community must learn to voice opinions and viewpoints, and more important, listen to opinions and the views of others in less guarded, more open and trusting ways. Secrecy breeds hostility. Hostility breeds fear and insecurity, which circles back to being guarded and secret, which breeds hostility. This will take some time to overcome. Trust is a complex and fragile currency in any community. It has been tarnished and devalued in Sechelt. My commitment tonight is that our council will model the behavior we all want to see in our community. We will be open and listen with care. There are no naysayers in my world, and there will be no other name calling. You will be able to hold us accountable, and while we may squirm, we will not lash out. There will be no rants. We will not blame the message. We will not blame the message or the messenger for our mistakes and failures. To follow Mahatma Gandhi, we will be the change we want to see in the world. 18 years ago, in a similar inaugural address, I referenced the Christian text in 1 Corinthians on faith, hope, and charity, the greatest of these being charity, or love, to urge Sechelt residents to overcome anger and build a more inclusive, more accepting community. Tonight, I want to say the same things, but use the words of the Dalai Lama, who speaks to us of compassion. When we fill our lives with compassion for ourselves, for others, for the world, there is no room for anger or selfishness or even disregard for others. If we live with compassion, we accept others for who and what they are, on their terms, not ours. Imagine if we had had as much compassion for Sechelt as they have had for us, continually singing the welcome song when we least deserved it, hoping we would someday hear it and understand what was meant in that welcome to their world, the welcome to their territory. Sechelt understood what the Dalai Lama was saying when he wrote that ultimately humanity is one, and this small planet is our only home. At every level of society, familial, tribal, national, and international, the key to a happier and more successful world is the growth of compassion. We do not need to become religious, nor do we need to believe in an ideology. All that is necessary is for each of us to develop our good human qualities. For some years now, I have ended my emails and letters, not with yours truly, sincerely, regards, or other farewells, but with the simple, take care. I use this because I think we need to take care. We need to take much more care of how we live, of what we say, of who we are. We need to take care of the world we are in and the world we are making, the world we construct and inhabit with every breath, with every gesture. We live in a society that is very careless. I would say careless to the level of being reckless. We care little about others in the world. We care little about the living environment. We do care about ourselves, if looking out for number one can be considered a form of care rather than old-fashioned selfishness. In my view, the self-interest that is so rampant in our society is a form of reckless disregard for the world at large and not a form of care at all. If we live our lives with compassion and take care of how we live, our world will be a better place. Sechelt will be a better place. And that, I think, is what we all hope for. It is why we take the trouble to vote in local elections. My commitment to you this evening, and I'm sure the commitment of every councillor you've chosen to guide our community over the next 4 years, is to take care of our community, to seriously care about what we do and how we do it. And in return, I want you to take care of us. Encourage us when we're tired, strengthen us when we're weak, care for your council with compassion, so your council can take care of your community. Thank you. Thank you. Before I sit down and ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting, I would like to say a couple more words and correct a mistake I sort of made on election night in the celebrations of victory. I've gone through the evening and I thanked all the supporters that I could see in the room and various ones that weren't in the room, the candidates who were leading candidates and those who were successful and those who weren't. And when I got home, I realized, in fact, I got an email saying, you know, you didn't thank one person. And of course that was Irene. And part of it was a little bit of an oversight in the night. And part of it was the fact that Irene and I are so close and worked so closely during the election that thanking her would be a little bit like thanking myself. Well, Bruce, you did a really good job on that. So a bit of immodesty. But the reality is that the people who are closest to us are the ones that the community really needs to thank for the sacrifice that the councillors and candidates in our town, in the regional district, and in other towns really make. So through Irene, but in thanks also to Adrian, who supports Darnelda, Georgie, who supports Noel, Lena, who supports Doug, Penny, who supports Darren, Dawn, who supports Alice, and Mike, in memory of Gay, who was at home supporting you for so many years before she passed in December. The community, and we thank you for the work you do and the sacrifices that you give. Thank you very much. I have a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Darnell. Seconded by Darren Inkster. All those in favor, we have a reception.